Happy Juneteenth. My name is Antonia Faith, and it's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. I woke up this morning feeling blessed to be black and happy to be nappy. Can I get it? Amen. By now, most of us know the story of Juneteenth, but did you know that Juneteenth wasn't actually the end of slavery in Texas? Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, effectively ending slavery in the United States. But the enslaved people of Texas didn't know they were free until 2 years later, on June 19, 1865, which we celebrate as Juneteenth. But Juneteenth wasn't the end of slavery. They just rebranded it. In 2018, a construction crew found 2 human bones at the site of a new education center for the school district. A few months earlier, on the second day of construction, a man named Mr. Moore stopped by the construction site to warn the crews that they were building right on top of an African American cemetery. But they kept digging, and the spirit said, "All right, bet. I could show you better than I could tell you." By the end of the summer, they'd uncovered rings, gardening tools, chains, and the unmarked graves of 95 people. There was 1 female and 94 males between the ages of 14 and 70, each buried in a pinewood coffin. They're now known as the Sugarland 95, but who were they and how did they get here? Sugarland's entire economy relied on sugarcane plantations. When the enslaved people of Texas learned about their freedom, the economy plummeted towards a deep depression. Plantation owners started going bankrupt because they couldn't exploit black people for free labor anymore. Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution the same year that slavery ended in Texas. It says that slavery in the United States is unconstitutional unless you were convicted of a crime. In 1878, Edward Cunningham and Littlebury Ellis took advantage of this loophole. What kind of name is Littlebury? They signed a contract to lease prisoners from the state. Harvesting sugarcane is extremely difficult, so they handpicked the biggest and strongest workers, including a 6-foot-tall 14-year-old. And just 8 years after being free, black people were back on the plantation. These Sugarland plantations were known for being brutal. These were heavily built individuals. Some bones were misshapen by the sheer musculature and labor. Do you know how hard you'd have to work to change the shape of your bones? The Convention of Colored Men of Texas filed a complaint. They complained about the conditions and the fact that prisoners were forced to work from sunup to sundown. They literally worked people to death. The prisoners would be forced to toil in the fields chopping sugarcane until they dropped dead in their tracks. The plantations paid the state of Texas $73,468 per year to lease convicts, and it just so happened that Texas had the largest prison population at the time. They convicted black people of crimes ranging from murder to simply talking too loud, selling a watermelon, or just being homeless. Their goal was to pack the prisons full of black people that they could lease out to the plantations. The food on the plantations was so nasty and rotten that the prisoners would often refuse to eat and nearly starve to death. There were bed bugs in the clothes and bedding. They usually didn't have underwear or shoes unless the state inspector was coming, and the guards would often whip, torture, and abuse them. Many of the newly discovered skeletons had bullet wounds. These records from the prison show that 28-year-old Nathan Pope was killed while trying to escape after being on the plantation for only 2 days. He wasn't going for none of that. Y'all wasn't finna make him a slave again. So many people escaped from the plantation or died while trying to escape that the state began losing money. The public began to complain and protest about the way these people were being treated, and the lease that they signed back in 1878 was gonna expire soon. But the state worried that if they stopped using prisoners for free labor, the economy would crash again. As the political elections started to get closer, convict leasing became a pressing issue. The public sided with the politician who promised to reform the prison system. In 1911, convict leasing finally ended. Fast forward about 100 years back to the construction site in 2018, and the 95 prisoners buried in Sugarland needed the public's support again. The school wanted to exhume the bodies. They were going to lay the bodies to rest right next to the very people who enslaved them. It was obvious that the school just wanted them out of the way so that they could finish their building. Mr. Moore wasn't going to let that happen. Reginald Moore was a Texas prison guard back in the 80s. When asked about his experience, he told an interviewer, "You could see and feel the oppression. Even before I learned the history, I felt it." This feeling led Mr. Moore to investigate deeper into the history of Texas. Because of his extensive research, Mr. Moore knew that bodies were buried here, but he couldn't prove it until they unearthed the very people that history tried to hide. For the next 4 years, Mr. Moore fought researchers, politicians, and the school district to make sure that the 95 bodies were properly identified, preserved, and memorialized. Mr. Moore said, "I'm speaking for those who didn't have a voice then and now. I felt like I had the duty to advocate for them and to speak from the grave for these people. I felt like I was called to set them free." And he succeeded. Kinda. The bodies of the Sugarland 95 were returned to their original resting place. Because of a lack of funding, the researchers were only able to identify and contact the descendants of 3 out of 95 people. Prison records give a list of the possible identities of the Sugarland 95, and some DNA testing was done, but the headstones identify each person as just a number. There was also plans for the school to create a park-like memorial to educate the public about the people that are buried here, but that hasn't happened yet either. For now, all they have is a fence securing the perimeter of the cemetery. As we celebrate Juneteenth and the end of slavery, remember those that they thought we forgot about, and honor the people who lived and died on the plantations even after 1865. Rest in peace to the Sugarland 95 and Mr. Moore. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll see you next time.